My rattlesnake encounter. Way back in 1994, I was living in the Salt Lake Valley in the state of Utah in the United States. Late in the summer, on a Saturday morning, I just felt like going out for a short hike. Salt Lake City and all the suburbs are located in the Salt Lake Valley, which is about 500 square miles, and that's approximately 1,300 square kilometers. The Salt Lake Valley is surrounded by mountains that are as tall as the Alps in Switzerland. There are a few places where you can drive up between the mountains, steep roads leading up to hiking areas and ski resorts. One of those roads goes up Big Cottonwood Canyon. The mountains and the forests are tall, and they line up the road left and right as you drive up to the canyon. It's a beautiful drive. You see all kinds of colors. Dark greens where the pine trees are, and lighter greens where the aspen trees grow. In between, you'll see gray rocks and mountains, and either brown or reddish soil. I was never much of a person who enjoyed doing things in groups, so that day, again, I went all by myself. I thought I was well prepared. I had my Swiss Army knife with me, a handkerchief and a light jacket. I was wearing jeans and tennis shoes. Very casual. When I got up to the mountain and parked my car along the road, of course, I did not follow a hiking trail, but I looked for a path for myself. I just saw the top of a smaller mountain, and I decided to get all the way to the top of it. Lots of rocks, small ones and big ones, a few bushes, some shrubs, and a few occasional juniper trees who had survived winds and rains and storms. As I was making my way up, sometimes I would have to crawl underneath a fallen tree or climb over large rocks and boulders, just the way I like it. A little bit of freedom and adventure. Just me and nature. Of course, I always look for stuff. I like to know what's ahead of me, next to me, or sometimes behind me. Aside from a few birds, I didn't see any wildlife. It was a windy day, and all the way on the other side of the canyon, I saw some rock climbers. They looked very small from where I was standing. After a while, the mountain got quite steep, and I started zigzagging up the steepest part of it. I have to say, I felt very safe and soon reached the top. I remember looking around and just marveling at all the hills, mountains and forests that surrounded me. It felt amazing. After a short rest, I started climbing down again, slowly. I hadn't brought any water or anything to eat, and I was getting hungry for lunch. Still, I wanted to get back down safely. Sometimes I saw a better way down between large rocks and boulders, and sometimes I had to carefully climb over those rocks and boulders to avoid thorny bushes and areas that were dense with shrubs as tall as me. I definitely didn't want to get into the shrubs. You can't see what's in there, or if something or somebody is in there. Now, the thing about the canyons in Utah is we have mountain lions, or pumas, and bobcats, which are large cats with pointed ears, about as tall as a medium dog. Now, those animals usually leave you alone if you don't surprise them or push them into a corner. If that happens, you can get hurt very badly. But, for example, bobcats, they don't kill people. They might scratch you up, but that's it. And mountain lions might fight with you, but they really just want to be left alone. I have not heard of any serious incidents between mountain lions and people in or around the Salt Lake Valley. Oh, did I mention that we also have bears? Yes, sirree, Bob, we do. Brown bears and black bears. But they're usually in the higher regions. They can come down when there's not enough food in the higher regions, but at least in Utah, they don't like to come to towns or villages a lot. Bears just need and want their own space. If you see a bear, just slowly walk away. If a bear comes running after you, you have probably done something very stupid, and running away doesn't help. Those bears can run pretty fast. And climbing up a tree might save you if you pick a good tree on which you can get up high fast. Otherwise, the bears know how to climb trees as well. Luckily, we don't have any grizzly bears in Utah. Occasionally, I would see a deer or a bunch of them. When that happened, I would just stand still and watch them until they walked or skipped away along their deer trails. Coming down the hill, I suddenly found myself standing on top of a smaller hill. I came up a different way from a different direction, so I hadn't seen that hill. I had to think for a minute or two what to do and how to get down that hill. The hillside was full of gravel, little rocks, probably 1 million of them from top to bottom. I wasn't too worried yet. Sure, the hill was steep, but at the bottom was a grassy area. So I decided to step onto the bed of rocks, and the funniest thing happened. I just stood on top of the rocks, and all the little rocks started moving down the hill. I was standing on top of those rocks, and I just stretched out my arms to keep my balance as I was sliding down on those rocks. I do remember that all of a sudden I was going pretty fast when I was getting closer to the bottom of the hill. Dang nabbit, what to do? I had to slow down somehow, but the rocks just went on moving down the hill faster and faster with me on top. Okay, since I didn't have an emergency brake, I decided to wait until I was almost at the bottom. My glorious idea was to jump off the moving bed of rocks and run into the grassy area, hoping I could slow myself down somehow. Would you believe it? Everything went according to plan. I jumped off the rocks near the bottom of the hill and I ran into the grassy area. There was an old tree log lying on the grass, and it was a bit of a surprise to me. I was still going quite fast, but I decided to jump over the tree log and then stop and catch my breath. Again, everything went according to plan. I made it. I was only halfway down the mountain, but I thought that I had managed the rocks pretty well. After I had jumped over the tree log, I stood still and was breathing heavily. Within seconds, I heard a strange but familiar sound. Panic. What was that? I knew I had heard that sound before, but I wasn't sure this would be happening to me. I slowly turned around, and within milliseconds, I realized that it was the sound of a rattlesnake rattling. And sure enough, there it was, about a yard or a meter away from me, coiled up, standing tall and hissing at me. It was ready to strike and bite me. I should probably tell you that I used to have a deadly fear of snakes. Any snake, poisonous or not. It doesn't make any sense, I know. But I got scared and panicked. Now, do you remember those movies when an angel sits on one of your shoulders and the devil sits on your other shoulder? Yeah, that was my situation. The angel on my right shoulder told me to slowly walk away. When a rattlesnake hisses and is ready to strike and bite you, it's only because it feels threatened. It has nowhere else to go, and human beings are quite large to a snake. My shoulder angel knew that and told me, just walk away slowly and you will be just fine. Okay? Well, but then my shoulder devil said to me, "Run away, run like hell, there could be more snakes." Okay, well, so what now? My fear and my shoulder devil made me run down the mountainside. It was not very steep in that area, so I thought I would just run until I was far away from that angry snake. I wasn't thinking. Big surprise. Then I came to the top of a large boulder. It was probably a good 10 meters, approximately 10 yards tall. Not a big deal, right? The problem was, at the bottom of that boulder was a grassy area with many dozens of pointed rocks. They almost looked like pyramids, and they were very close together. They poked out of the ground about a foot tall each, 12 inches or about 30 centimeters. And now my shoulder angel came back and told me, "Go back and walk around the big bad boulder. It's the smart thing to do." Yeah, right. But my shoulder devil said, "Nah, don't listen to that wussy angel. If you go back, you might encounter more rattlesnakes." Well, if you know what it's like to be scared of something, of course, you listen to your shoulder devil, even when you know it's crazy. So, as I was standing on top of that large boulder, I tried to find a spot for my left foot and my right foot to land, because my plan was to jump off it. There was very little room between some of those rocks, but I had an approximate idea for my right foot. I also had a general idea for my left foot, but I wasn't sure I could land the way I wanted to do this. Going back was not possible. The fear of getting bitten by a rattlesnake was just too much for me. Finally, I jumped off the boulder, and my right foot landed perfectly between two rocks. My left foot and leg, on the other hand, made a funny noise when I landed. It sounded almost as though someone had broken a small twig of a tree, and it sounded something like this. Before I actually hit the ground, I knew that I had broken my left leg. It was a small fracture. Both bones. Nothing sticking out or bleeding, but I remember the feeling from the 2 times before when I broke my right leg twice in Switzerland playing soccer. Same sound, same pain. For a few minutes I was sitting on the ground and I was convinced that the snakes were coming for me. Then I finally cooled off a little. The fear slowly went away and reality settled in. You're halfway down a mountain with a broken leg. How are you going to back to the street where your car is parked, you dummy? Of course, I was still sitting on all those pyramid rocks. I tried to lift my left leg and tried to move all my hands and my right leg, going slowly and taking it easy. That lasted about 5 minutes. Every single time my left leg touched something, like a bush, a rock, or a shrub, I yelled out in aggravating pain. Okay, mister, time to rethink the situation. I could see the rock climbers on the other side and I started yelling. Nothing. I whistled through my fingers as loud as I could for a very long time. Nothing. Finally, I realized that the wind was blowing against me and my yelling and whistling probably didn't even make it across the street. Time for a new plan. So I broke off a large tree limb from a very dry and almost dying tree. Then I took off my jacket and my undershirt. No, I didn't want to get a suntan. I used my trusted Swiss Army knife to cut my undershirt into strips of fabric, like bandages. When I was done, I put my jacket back on. and I used the strips of fabric to tie the tree limb around my left leg from top to bottom, being very careful. Then I turned around on my bottom. I moved down sideways the rest of the mountain so I wouldn't roll down the steep part. At this point, I was moving backwards on my two hands, my bottom and my right leg. Very cumbersome and very slow going. Hey, I know, but I managed to figure out how to do this without hurting my broken leg. In the interest of time, let me just tell you that it took me over 4 hours to get back to the canyon road. Did I mention that it took me over 4 hours to get back to the canyon road? When I finally made it to the road, I realized that I was much farther up than where I had parked my car. Great. Just imagine a dirty-looking guy at the edge of the canyon road with a weird thing on one of his legs. I decided to hitchhike. Nobody stopped for almost half an hour. Finally, a guy slowed down and rolled down his window and yelled over at me, "Do you need any help?" "Yes," I said. "If you could give me a lift to my car just a little bit farther down, I would really appreciate it." The guy helped me into his car. We drove for about 2 minutes to get to my car. He didn't care much, and I didn't have time to tell him what happened. He helped me out of his car, and then he helped me get into my car. Luckily, I had an automatic car, and I was able to use my right foot to drive down out of the canyon. I stopped at the first gas station, and I called my family. This was a long time ago, before cell phones. After waiting what seemed like forever, I finally got picked up by family members. One took my car and drove it home. The other one drove me straight to the nearest hospital. When I arrived at the hospital, the nurses, both male and female, were so impressed with my splint that there were many hospital workers who came to look at the stick that I had wrapped around my leg with fabric strips for my cut-up undershirt.
Wow. Oh my God.
They all told me what a great job I had done. Honestly, I didn't feel that great. Nope, no more running away from snakes. Last fall, I saw a rattlesnake along the side of a hiking trail. I'm much older now and always hike with hiking poles. I slowly walked up to the snake, moved my hiking pole in a circle and pointed it into the tall grass without touching the snake. Then I just watched the rattlesnake slither away into the direction I pointed with my hiking pole. I think we were both glad that it went as smoothly as it did. In the years since that rattlesnake encounter and the broken leg, I studied rattlesnakes, and I'm no longer afraid of them. It's strange, but I just know they won't attack me if I leave them alone or slowly walk away. And here in Utah, they are everywhere. We are a desert. The rattlesnakes even come into people's backyards sometimes, even in the cities. By the way, it's illegal to kill them in Utah because they are an endangered species. If you feel that your life is in danger, however, you are allowed to kill a rattlesnake. However, they do realize how tall an adult human being is, and just like you and me, they would rather slither away in peace than getting hurt or harassed by a person. So, the moral of the story is, if you ever hear that rattling sound, just walk away slowly. Don't look back, just walk away. You will be fine. Trust me.